Hello everyone, welcome to our newest member video. My name is Emma Pereira, I'm the Communications Manager at Save the Rhino International, and I'm here today with two brilliant supporters of ours, Kevin and Jordi. Now I'll go into a little bit of detail and then I'm sure they can fill you in on all the rest of it. But the main reason we're talking here today is because Kevin's photo, which is the winner of a rhino calendar that we have almost sold out of online, so that's brilliant. But it was a black rhino photo that some of you will have seen if you bought the calendar. It's our first ever calendar, and we're really excited to be hearing Kevin and Jordi's story of how that photo came about and how their support is going for our charity. So thank you very much both of you for being here. I know you've got a long history of supporting Save the Rhino. Jordi ran a half marathon for us in Bath Half, actually, wasn't it, in 2018? And Kevin has continued to support the whole way through, and they're kind of a bit of a double act on rhino conservation, inspiring people all over the UK and the world. And they're both South African, which is even better, the heart of rhinos. So let's get into it. A big hello from me. Kevin, did you want to start, if you could introduce yourself for our members and talk about a little bit of your background with rhinos?
Hi, so I'm Kevin. I am South African. I lived in South Africa for the first 40 years of my life, and Jordi was born there. And so being in South Africa, well, wildlife and conservation is very much part of life. From a young age, we went to safari parks, or game reserves as we call them. And all conservation interests me, but obviously the plight of the rhino was something which became paramount to us, and Jordi particularly, a rhino conservation. And then we moved over to the UK in 2008, but we continued to go back to South Africa as often as we could. And as often as we could as well, we would go to safari parks, particularly the Pilanesberg Game Reserve up near Sun City. And yeah, that's where Jordi basically became really involved in conservation and getting to know the rhinos. They've got a very good program there, which we were able to get to know. And then I have, while I've been at Millfield School in Somerset, managed to run a number of conservation courses around the world. We went, for example, to India to look at tiger conservation, and Mexico to look at turtle and primate conservation. But the latest trip was very close to our heart, and Jordi came with us when she was a sixth former there to look at rhino conservation in South Africa. And we went to the Careful Wild Sanctuary, where we had a 4 days experience of the biggest rhino orphanage in the world. And that's where I managed to get the photo of the young black rhino mock charging me from behind the safety of an electric fence, I must add.
Good to know you had that safety fence between the two of you. Seeing the photo, will know that it's definitely a charging rhino. So wonderful.
Yeah.
And Jordi, I know that you are now training to be a vet, so it's a lifelong passion for you as well, and continuing into your career.
Yes, of course. Yes, I'm a first year veterinary student at Nottingham, and I think the dream is definitely going back to South Africa at one point and working with the rhinos for sure. I can second a lot of what Dad has said, that it's always just been like going to safaris. The rhino interest has just always increased, which is why in 2018 I decided to run the half marathon to raise some money for Save the Rhino. And then actually just June this year, I did 100k over the month to raise money for Careful Wild as well. So yeah, and raise awareness and everything.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I know that looking back at some of our records, and I know that you guys have raised more than £300 over the last couple of years, and that's just incredible, because as you guys know, more than many, because you've been there and witnessed things, it really does make a difference. So thank you. And just for anyone watching this, you'll see a few little rhinos popping up in the background, definitely of Kevin's screen at the moment. There's a lovely rhino on the wall. We know that rhinos is a big passion. I guess a little bit more about the photo. Could you just share with people, and for both of you, because you were both there at the time, maybe you've got slightly different takes on how it came about, but yeah, what were you up to that day? What happened with that individual rhino? I believe, did it have a name, that rhino at Careful Wild? I'm not sure if we remember that, but
yeah, they do name all their rhinos, and those three only black rhinos they had, other than a very, very small baby, which we didn't even get to see. in quarantine still, but those three were quite big. I can't remember their individual names, to be honest. And basically in the morning they feed them, and so the students all had an opportunity to feed them. And Jordi's actually got some video footage of them. I don't know if you've ever heard a baby rhino make a noise, but it's just does not fit.
Noise.
It's a little squeaking sound. And in ways, it was amazing to see them, because they were so tame that they were almost like little dogs, like little puppies, and very, very interesting social dynamics to watch as they came in and got fed, and then how the whole structure worked and how they had learnt where to stand and get fed. And it was an incredible experience for the individual students to feed their rhinos. And then when that was finished, they were helping clean out the cages and things, and I just strolled behind to the camp where those 3 black rhino were. That no people would go into the cage with those black rhino, because they were so aggressive. So they were always behind fences, and I just went and sat under an acacia tree, and I was just taking photos, and they were munching away on some grass. And then as I moved around, one of them saw me and sort of came charging towards me, and then walked back and came again. So I had a nice lot of time to set up and take a whole series of photos, but that was the one that came out the best as an action shot.
Yeah, and I bet anyone listening or watching to this right now is going to be envious of that because of the current COVID, and just wanting to get out somewhere and see any wildlife, let alone some black rhinos. But yeah, Jordi, how was your experience at Careful Wild? I think your dad was telling me that you were actually able to help with some of their feeding and the. Did you participate in any of the veterinary procedures as well? Was that part of your drive?
So yeah, the day we arrived, little rhino came in, an orphan rhino, and then that evening I was watching how they were dealing with that. So they put her straight into quarantine, and then I think it was 2 days after the vet came out, and she'd actually had some of her tail missing, which they could only assume was from, her being predators coming after her. But it was amazing to watch and just experience it all. But at the same time, so sad to see all these orphans who have lost all their mothers from the poaching crisis. So that's always in the back of your head as well. As amazing as being there, it is also very sad to think why there is a need for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Those difficult situations when I think often, as you say, those experiences are brilliant, but actually in many ways you'd rather that experience didn't exist.
Yeah, for sure.
That particular little baby that came in, they flew her in a helicopter. She only just fitted. She was reasonably big, but she had, so as Jordi said, her tail had been bitten half off, and she had quite bad bite marks on her rear end. I think hyena had been attacking her, and she had a bullet lodged in her neck as well.
Yeah, it did.
So generally the poachers don't shoot the babies because they don't want to fire a second shot, because that would possibly give them away. So she obviously had been sort of attacking them while they were trying to hack her mother's horn off, and so they had actually shot her, but sort of miraculously that the bullet had just lodged in the neck without doing any damage, and they were able to remove it. So just a tiny baby, and these poachers had not given a second thought to just put a bullet in there. So it really was very close to home. It was a phenomenal experience.
I mean, difficult to sort of come out of that situation thinking what's the best memory, but I did wonder if part of that time at Careful Wild or any other time in your lives, you had a favourite experience with rhinos, perhaps one that wasn't so challenging. But yeah, any particular ones that jump out? Obviously, we have the rhino photo that may be one already, but anything else, I'd love to know.
I remember being very, very young and sitting in the back of the car, and I was just kind of minding my own business, and you'd stopped on the road, and I just looked up and there's this rhino crossing the road, and I don't know why, but that image has stuck with me for so long. I think it's just amazing to think that these rhino were just free roaming, with just doing what they wanted, and yeah, it was really, really special actually. for some reason that stuck with me for sure. But Care for Wild as well, also just an amazing memory, and I hope to go back there one day, hopefully.
Yeah, I was also lucky enough when I taught in South Africa. We used to take a biology tour to a game reserve where they had 2 rhinos that had been hand reared, so they were relatively tame, but they had been released onto the reserve, and we didn't have contact with them as much as possible. But while we were doing field work with the boys in the reserve, if they heard us, they used to come running from all over to come and, because they're very inquisitive, and come and look at us. And often the other teachers used to have to sort of throw stones towards them to just keep them away from the boys, because their eyesight is very poor, and they come sort of bumbling along. They were never a threat, but yeah, they were fun to have around, and the boys could get up close to them, while as close as we'd let them. But sometimes running to hide behind trees and things because they got a bit frisky. But it was amazing to have that experience with rhinos. Both those rhinos have since been poached. It was just on the outskirts of Pretoria in South Africa that there was a farm there, and unfortunately they've both been taken.
Well, it's a lovely thing to know that actually throughout your career, Kevin, you've used something that you're clearly passionate about, and you're inspiring many other children and your own. So to do something else, do something more, which is brilliant. And just on your point, Jordi, about a rhino crossing the road, I had a lovely story the other day from one of our partners at Shashlu in Falosi in South Africa, and he was talking. He's a section ranger, and he was talking about the impact of COVID, and obviously it's been very difficult for every reserve across the world, let alone the African continent. But they obviously locked down their reserve, and they didn't have any game drives and things. And he suddenly sort of found the wildlife creeping back into the roads, and it was almost like blocks of wildlife and of rhino dung piles all along the road where he had never seen them before, because tourists would be up and down there all the time. So it was actually, in a difficult time, quite a lovely story. Wildlife almost bring back the parts that humans would have otherwise travelled on. So that was quite nice. Okay, and then I guess one final question for both of you is what's next? So Jordi, you've said you've got aspirations to go back and be a vet, wildlife vet, out in that project. How long will that be? What do you expect from that?
Well, I mean, hopefully I can get there as soon as possible. Obviously the course is 5 years, so I'll try to integrate as much of rhino as I can within the next 5 years. So the uni I'm at is actually linked with Twycross Zoo, and they've recently just had a new rhino come from Germany, I think. So I mean, it'd be a dream to get some, experience in zoos whilst I'm here. But hopefully I can progress and find myself back in South Africa for some time working with the rhinos. That's definitely an aspiration.
Absolutely. What about you, Kevin?
Yeah, I would love to. I'd promised Care for Wild I'd take another tour from Millfield back there, perhaps now knowing more what they do and having fundraised a bit. But obviously COVID has put a hold on that, because we're looking to go in June next year, but that won't happen. But certainly in years to come, I would love to support them and take British children, but it's a boarding school, and so children from all around the world to see firsthand what goes on there, and just how incredible these animals are. So I hope to strengthen my ties with Care for Wild over the years to come, and just general conservation across the board in South Africa, but particularly based around Care for Wild. Brilliant.
Well, I can't thank you both enough for doing this call, but obviously for entering the competition, because we absolutely love that photo. And anyone watching, if you're watching immediately when this is published, then hopefully you can still get hold of the calendar itself, which is online to buy. And if not, then you can enter our competition next year. We hope to have another one. And fingers crossed, we've got another image from one of the Hawksworths, whichever of you, whether it's a zoo or in South Africa. Thank you very much for being here today, and thank you everyone else for watching. I apologise that my camera has been off. We've had some technical issues today, but hopefully I'll see you all very soon. And as always, all of your feedback is very much welcome, so please do add a comment or get in touch with us to let us know what you think. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Emma.
Thanks for having us.